Hi, I'm Emma. At 28, I've just started my journey as a freelance graphic designer, trying to carve out my own space in a world that often feels overwhelming. I've always had a passion for art and design, but stepping into the freelance arena is a whole new ballgame. My little studio apartment is filled with sketches, color swatches, and the faint smell of coffee that fuels my late-night creativity. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and that means everything to me. Growing up in a traditional family, I've always felt like I was living in the shadow of my older sister, Sophie. At 30, she's a successful lawyer, married with a beautiful daughter. Our parents, Mark and Linda, have always celebrated her achievements, showering her with praise and attention. Every family dinner feels like a performance, with Sophie as the star and me as the invisible understudy. I remember those Saturday nights vividly. The table would be set with our mother's finest china, and as we gathered around, the conversation would inevitably turn to Sophie's latest accomplishments. "Sophie just won that big case," Dad would announce, his face beaming with pride. "That's our girl," Mom would chime in, her eyes sparkling with admiration. Meanwhile, I'd sit there, pushing my food around my plate, feeling more like a prop than a person. It's not that I don't love my sister, I do, but the constant comparisons and the feeling of being overlooked have left me with a deep sense of inadequacy. I've tried to make my mark, to show my parents that I'm worthy of their love and attention, but it always seems to fall short. As I navigate my new life, I can't shake the feeling that I'm fighting an uphill battle. The weight of my family's expectations looms over me, and I wonder if I'll ever be able to step out of Sophie's shadow and into my own light. Family dinners have become a ritual, a weekly gathering that feels more like a performance than a time for connection. Each Saturday, I find myself sitting at the dining table, surrounded by the familiar warmth of home, yet feeling more isolated than ever. The aroma of my mother's famous lasagna fills the air, but it does little to mask the tension that hangs over me like a dark cloud. "Ma, how's your freelance work going?" Mom asks, her tone polite but distant. I can see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes when I mention my latest project, a small branding job for a local cafe. It's not the high-profile work she dreams of for me, and I can feel the weight of her expectations pressing down on my shoulders. Meanwhile, Sophie sits across from me, effortlessly charming everyone with stories of her latest courtroom victories. "I just secured a major settlement for my client," she announces, her voice dripping with pride. Dad's face lights up and he leans forward, hanging on her every word. "That's incredible, Sophie. You're going to be a partner in no time," he exclaims, his admiration palpable. As they celebrate her success, I can't help but feel like a ghost at my own family dinner. I push my fork through the lasagna, the flavors lost on me as I replay the familiar script in my mind. I've always been the other child, the one who tries hard but never quite measures up. It's during one of these dinners that everything changes. As the conversation shifts back to Sophie, I notice my parents exchanging glances, a silent communication that sends a chill down my spine. "We have something important to discuss," Dad finally says, his voice steady but serious. My heart races as I brace myself for what's to come. "We've made our will," Mom continues, smoothing her napkin nervously, "and we've decided to leave everything to Sophie." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sit there, stunned, as my mind races to process the implications. "What about me?" I manage to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "I have a future too." Mom's expression shifts, a mix of pity and frustration. "Emma, Sophie has a family to think about. She needs this more than you do." In that moment, I feel a tidal wave of memories crashing over me. Years of feeling less than, of being the second choice. I remember the times I excelled, only to be overshadowed by Sophie's achievements. "You've always loved her more than me," I blurt out, the words spilling from my lips before I can stop them. The table falls silent, the weight of my accusation hanging in the air. I can see the shock on their faces, but I'm too far gone to care. "This isn't about money," I say, my voice shaking with emotion. "It's about respect. You've made it clear that I'm not your daughter in your eyes." As the tension escalates, I push my chair back, the sound echoing in the silence. "I'm done pretending," I declare, my heart racing. "Don't expect me to come to any more family dinners. I won't be your second-best child anymore." With that, I storm out of the house, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a family that never truly saw me. The door slams shut behind me, and I feel a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. The days that followed my explosive departure from my parents' house felt surreal. I had always been the one to keep my emotions in check, to play the role of the dutiful daughter, but now I was free from the suffocating expectations, the constant comparisons, and the feeling of being invisible. Yet, freedom came with its own set of challenges. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, pouring my energy into my work. I took on every freelance project I could find, determined to prove to myself that I was capable of success, even if my family didn't see it. I designed logos, created marketing materials, and even worked on a few websites. Each completed project felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my identity. But as I immersed myself in work, the loneliness crept in. I missed the idea of family, the warmth of shared meals, and the laughter that once filled our home. I tried to reach out to friends, but it felt like no one could truly understand the depth of my pain. I often found myself scrolling through social media, watching Sophie's perfect life unfold in pictures, her smiling with her husband, their daughter beaming in a new dress, and my parents looking so proud. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment, the weight of isolation pressed down on me. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, hesitating over Sophie's name. Part of me wanted to reach out, to mend the rift that had formed between us, but the other part of me felt betrayed. How could I reach out to the sister who had everything, while I felt like I had nothing? Just then, my phone buzzed with a message from Alex, a photographer I had met at a local art show. We had hit it off, sharing a passion for creativity and a desire to break free from societal norms. "Hey, Emma, want to grab coffee tomorrow? I'd love to catch up," he wrote. I smiled at the message, feeling a flicker of excitement. Alex had a way of making me feel seen, of appreciating my work without the weight of comparison. "Sure, sounds great," I replied, my heart lifting a little. The next day, we met at a cozy cafe filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft jazz playing in the background. As we talked, I found myself opening up about my struggles with my family. Alex listened intently, nodding as I shared my feelings of inadequacy and the pain of being overlooked. "You know, Emma," he said thoughtfully, "it's not about what they think of you. It's about what you think of yourself. You're talented, and you deserve to be proud of your work." His words resonated with me, igniting a spark of confidence I hadn't felt in a long time. I realized that I didn't need my parents' approval to validate my worth. I could create my own path, one that didn't rely on their expectations. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to build my freelance business, gaining more clients and recognition. I found joy in my work, and with Alex by my side, I began to embrace the life I was creating. But even as I thrived professionally, the emotional scars from my family's rejection lingered. I often thought about that last dinner, the hurtful words exchanged, and the feeling of being cast aside. I knew I had to confront those feelings eventually, but for now, I focused on my newfound independence and the love I was building with Alex. As the months rolled by, my life began to take shape in ways I had never imagined. My freelance graphic design business flourished, and I found myself working with clients who appreciated my creativity and vision. Each project I completed felt like a testament to my hard work and resilience. I was no longer the overlooked daughter. I was Emma, a talented designer carving out my own niche in the world. Alex and I grew closer, our connection deepening with each passing day. He was not just a partner, he was my confidant, my cheerleader, and my escape from the chaos of my past. We spent weekends exploring art galleries, hiking in the nearby hills, and cooking together in my tiny kitchen. His laughter filled my apartment, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy. One evening, as we sat on my couch, sipping wine and discussing our dreams, Alex turned to me with a serious expression. "Emma, I've been thinking. I want to take our relationship to the next level. I love you, and I can see a future with you." His words sent a rush of warmth through me. I had never felt so seen, so cherished. "I love you too, Alex," I replied, my heart swelling with emotion. I never thought I could feel this way again after everything. With that, we decided to take a leap of faith together. We began planning a small getaway to a cabin in the mountains, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of our daily lives and reconnect with nature. I felt a sense of excitement bubbling within me, a feeling that I was finally moving forward. As we prepared for our trip, I couldn't shake the nagging thoughts about my family. I had distanced myself from them, but the unresolved feelings lingered. I often wondered if I would ever be able to confront my parents and Sophie about the pain they had caused me. The weekend arrived, and we drove to the cabin, surrounded by towering trees and the crisp mountain air. It was a beautiful escape, and I felt the weight of my worries begin to lift. We spent our days hiking, cooking over an open fire, and stargazing at night. In those moments, I felt free from the expectations of my family and the burdens of my past. One night, as we sat by the fire, Alex took my hand. "Emma, I know you've been through a lot with your family. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here for you." His kindness touched me deeply. I realized that I didn't have to carry the weight of my past alone. I could share my struggles with someone who truly cared. "Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that more than you know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above us, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe one day I would find the courage to confront my family and seek closure. But for now, I wanted to focus on the present and the love I was building with Alex. When we returned home, I threw myself into my work, feeling invigorated and inspired. I started taking on larger projects, collaborating with local businesses, and even considering launching my own brand. The possibilities felt endless, and I was determined to make my mark. Yet, as I thrived in my professional life, the emotional scars from my family's rejection still haunted me. I often found myself scrolling through social media, watching Sophie's life unfold from a distance. I felt a mix of sadness and anger, knowing that I had distanced myself from the very people I once longed to connect with. 3 years had passed since I last saw my parents, and while I had built a new life filled with love and success, the absence of my family still lingered in the back of my mind. I had made peace with my decision to distance myself, but there were moments when I felt a pang of longing for the family I once knew. One sunny afternoon, as I was working on a new project at my desk, I heard a knock at the door. My heart raced as I approached, unsure of who it could be. When I opened the door, I was met with the sight of my parents, standing on my doorstep, looking older and more vulnerable than I remembered. "Emma," Mom said, her voice trembling slightly, "we've missed you so much." I stood frozen for a moment, my mind racing. After all this time, they had come to find me. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "We want to see our daughter again," Dad added, his expression earnest. "We've been thinking about you a lot." I felt a mix of anger and confusion. After years of silence, they suddenly wanted to reconnect? "Why now?" I asked, crossing my arms defensively. "After everything that happened, why do you want to see me?" Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. "Something has happened, Emma," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about Sophie?" My heart sank at the mention of my sister. "What about her?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite my reservations. "He's been going through a tough time," Dad explained, his voice heavy with concern. "She and her husband have separated and she's struggling. We thought maybe you could help us reach out to her." The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Sophie, the golden child, was facing her own challenges. I felt a strange mix of sympathy and resentment. "And you think I can just step in and fix everything?" I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "You didn't care about me when I needed you. Why should I help now?" Mom's face fell and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "We made mistakes, Emma. We know that now. We want to make things right, not just with you, but with Sophie too." I took a deep breath, trying to process their words. "You can't just waltz back into my life and expect everything to be okay," I said, my heart racing. "You've hurt me for years, and now you want my help?" Dad stepped forward, his expression earnest. "We're not asking for forgiveness right away. We just want a chance to reconnect, to be a family again." I felt torn. Part of me wanted to slam the door and walk away, but another part of me was curious about what had happened to Sophie. "I need time to think about this," I finally said, my voice steady. "I can't just jump back into this." They nodded, understanding the weight of my words. "We'll give you space," Mom said softly. "But please, think about it." As they turned to leave, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, sadness, and a flicker of hope. Maybe this was my chance to confront the past, to finally address the hurt that had lingered for so long. After they left, I sat on my couch, staring at the wall as I processed everything. I thought about Sophie and the struggles she must be facing. I had always wanted a sisterly bond, but the years of rivalry and hurt had created a chasm between us. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, hesitating over Sophie's name. Part of me wanted to reach out, to see how she was doing, but the other part of me felt the weight of our history. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to confront my family, not just for myself, but for Sophie too. I had spent too long running away from my past. It was time to face it head on. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I found myself oscillating between anger and empathy, replaying the scene with my parents over and over in my mind. I knew I had to reach out to Sophie, to understand what she was going through, and to see if there was a chance for us to reconnect. One evening, I took a deep breath and dialed her number. My heart raced as the phone rang, each tone echoing my uncertainty. Finally, I heard her voice on the other end. "Hello, Sophie, it's Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, wow, it's been a while," she replied, her tone a mix of surprise and hesitation. "Yeah, it has. I heard about what happened. I wanted to see if you're okay." There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear her processing my words. "I'm managing," she finally said, her voice quieter. "It's been tough, but I'm getting through it." "I can't imagine what you're going through," I said, my heart softening. "I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I want to understand. Can we meet?" "Of course," she replied, relief evident in her voice. "How about this weekend? There's a cafe I love near my place." "Sounds good, I'll see you then," I said, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. When the weekend arrived, I found myself sitting at the cafe, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. The familiar aroma of roasted beans filled the air, but my stomach churned with nerves. I hadn't seen Sophie in years, and I wasn't sure how this meeting would unfold. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but there was a vulnerability about her that made my heart ache. "Emma," she said, her voice soft as she approached the table. "Sophie," I replied, standing to give her a tentative hug. It felt strange, yet comforting to hold her again. We sat down, and for a moment the silence stretched between us. "I'm really sorry about everything," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you, and I never meant to." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of our shared history. "It's been hard for me too, Sophie. I always felt like I was in your shadow, like I didn't matter as much." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "I get it. I've always felt the pressure to be perfect, to live up to Mom and Dad's expectations. I thought if I succeeded, it would make them proud, but it just pushed us apart." As we talked, I began to see the cracks in her facade. Sophie had always been the golden child, but beneath that exterior was a woman grappling with her own insecurities and fears. "I thought being successful would make me happy, but it didn't," she admitted, wiping away a tear. "I lost sight of what really mattered, my family, my happiness." "I've missed you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I've missed having a sister." Sophie reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "I want to rebuild our relationship, Emma. I want us to be there for each other no matter what." In that moment, I felt a shift. The years of rivalry and hurt began to fade away, replaced by a sense of understanding and compassion. "I want that too," I replied, squeezing her hand. "But we need to be honest with each other moving forward." We spent the next few hours talking, sharing our fears, our dreams, and the pain we had both endured. It felt liberating to finally open up, to let go of the resentment that had built up over the years. As we left the cafe, I felt a sense of hope blossoming between us. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where we could support each other and heal the wounds of our past. In the weeks that followed my heartfelt conversation with Sophie, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Our meeting had opened the door to a relationship I had longed for, and I was determined to nurture it. We began to meet regularly, sharing coffee, laughter, and stories about our lives. It was as if we were rediscovering each other, peeling back the layers of hurt and misunderstanding that had built up over the years. Sophie confided in me about her struggles after the separation. She was navigating the complexities of co-parenting with her ex-husband while trying to find her footing again. I listened, offering support and encouragement, and in return, she celebrated my successes in my freelance career. For the first time, I felt seen and valued by my sister, and it was a beautiful feeling. One evening, as we sat in my apartment, sipping wine and reminiscing about our childhood, Sophie turned to me with a serious expression. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about our parents. I know they've hurt us, but I think they're trying to change. They want to be part of our lives again." I nodded, recalling the visit from Mom and Dad. "I know they want to reconnect, but it's hard for me to forget the past. I still feel the sting of their favoritism." "I get that," Sophie replied, her voice soft. "But maybe we can give them a chance to show us they've changed. We can set boundaries and make it clear what we need from them." Her words resonated with me. Perhaps it was time to confront my parents again, not just for my sake, but for the sake of our family. I realized that healing could only happen if we were willing to face the past together. After some reflection, I decided to reach out to my parents. I called them one evening, my heart racing as I dialed their number. "Mom, Dad, can we meet? I think it's time we talk." They agreed, and we set a date for dinner at a local restaurant. As the day approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I wanted to express my feelings, to let them know how their actions had affected me, but I also wanted to give them a chance to show they were willing to change. When we sat down at the table, I could see the nervousness in their eyes. "Thank you for meeting with us, Emma," Dad said, his voice sincere. "We've missed you so much." "I've missed you too," I replied, taking a deep breath. "But we need to talk about what happened. I need you to understand how your favoritism hurt me." As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I shared my feelings of inadequacy, the years of feeling overlooked, and the pain of being compared to Sophie. To my surprise, they listened intently, their expressions shifting from defensiveness to understanding. "We're so sorry, Emma," Mom said, tears in her eyes. "We never meant to make you feel that way. We were so focused on Sophie's achievements that we lost sight of you." Dad nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "We want to do better. We want to be the parents you deserve." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. We talked for hours, sharing our feelings and hopes for the future. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt necessary, like we were finally breaking down the walls that had kept us apart for so long. As we left the restaurant, I felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. I knew that rebuilding our relationship would take time, but I was willing to put in the effort. With Sophie by my side, I felt empowered to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the months that followed, our family began to heal. We started having regular dinners together, where we could celebrate each other's successes without comparison. I watched as my parents made a genuine effort to support both Sophie and me, and it felt good to finally be seen. As I looked around the table during one of our family dinners, I felt a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. I realized that family wasn't about perfection. It was about love, understanding, and the willingness to grow together. With Alex's unwavering support and my sister by my side, I was ready to embrace this new chapter of my life. I had learned that it was never too late to mend broken relationships, and that love could flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. And as I raised my glass to toast to our newfound connection, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was no longer the overlooked daughter. I was Emma, a woman who had found her voice, her family, and her place in the world.